Hello friends, it is Saturday, April 8th. Happy National Poetry Month to all of us who celebrate. I'm starting a new reading vlog today. Sadly, I am not reading a ton of poetry lately, and I'm starting to realize it might be because I've been writing a lot of poetry, which is not bad, but I think it may be that when I'm focused on creating something, I tend to not want to read too much of it. But that being said, right now I'm currently reading Motherhood by Sheila Heti, and this is a very beat up copy because it's a discarded library book. I have the dust jacket there. But yes, I'm reading it with my friend Ivana in the city, and she already finished it last week. I was very behind. I am about, my pen is in it, so it's hard to tell. I have a fourth left. I am liking it. I did read what Ivana thinks of it, and I do agree with her that it's quite gimmicky, but it does talk about really interesting and important things. It's about a woman contemplating motherhood. I started to call unmotherhood, reflecting on why, as a woman, the default choice should be or is considered to have children. Just being an adult. Part of growing up, being considered a stable adult, is to procreate. But women especially, seems like to not have children is some sort of rebellion or a subversion. And she talks about why it is so, when some people just do not want to have children, and it's not because they're choosing actively not to have children. It's just that they don't choose to have women. And so the book goes back and forth on whether or not she wants a child. I look like a Roman senator today. It's a great follow-up to Breasts and Eggs. I think as I enter my late 20s, I'm 27 now, I'm leaning towards the decision that I do want children. But I grew up, before I met my partner, never fantasizing about getting married or having babies. And I talked to Ivana about this, but I think that if in an alternate universe I had not met my partner, probably would be fine not having kids, and I'd probably be fine being single. Obviously, I love my partner and I love sharing a life with him, and I also want to share this life for the rest of the time that we have on this earth. But it's also acknowledge that if I weren't in this situation, definitely find fulfillment by myself, or that I could live a very full life. And Sheila Heti does talk about the idea of fantasizing and daydreaming about different versions of your life and how it tends to pull people away from living their current life. I appreciate that she's honest about her ideas of them. There are elements of motherhood that she tends to skip. I think it's intentional that she only reflects on the negative or just the pressurized version of that. But that's just something that I think lacks in this. Obviously, it's not meant to be a full circle contemplation of the entire idea of motherhood. That's something that I'm interested in getting through lots of reading, but I think it's just like, okay, well, I'm going to read this and then I'm going to look for other perspectives. But I do appreciate the questions that she brings up and she mulls over. That's something that I enjoy about Sheila Heti's writing, is that she is very indulgent in reflection and sort of topsy-turvy narration. I don't think she shies away from that. She takes the time that she needs, and she's not afraid to turn back on decisions that the narrator has made and show that the narrator too is going back and forth from their ideas. I think that's very honest, and that it brings a lot to the discussion. But anyway, I'm waiting to start a poetry class actually with the great Marianne Chan. I haven't read all Heathens. I will link it below, but she's a wonderful poet and someone that I look up to in the community. But today I signed up for a class with her at Kundiman, which is a wonderful poetry organization. I'll also link them below. Happy There's an airplane. Hi friends, it is Tuesday, April 11th. I'm not sure when I started this reading vlog. The weekend I didn't really read. Went for some walks. I really like sharing the clips. I don't know if people like watching it, but I'm gonna insert them anyway. I did finish Sheila Heti's Motherhood just last night. Posted an Instagram post talking about motherhood in conversation with breasts and eggs, because I think it's so serendipitous that I read them one after the other. I think they're in a really great conversation with one another about motherhood and the opposite, which I've been calling unmothering. If you want to see more in depth of what I thought of this in conjunction with breasts and eggs, got my Instagram post. Maybe wrapping it up shortly. I did like this, but it did feel quite long, as did breasts and eggs. I don't know if it's the subject matter as much as the meandering of the novel. I continue to really enjoy Sheila Heti's writing. I read Pure Color last year. It had its faults and it had its moments. I really enjoyed reading it, and I enjoyed what it made me think about and thinking about those things. I find that a book is a good book when I think about it a lot afterwards. I still find myself thinking about Pure Color. And I think I'm going to find myself thinking about breasts and eggs and motherhood for a long time. My next read that I started last night is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I am not too far into it. I'm still at the very first scene, but I'm really enjoying it so far. Otherwise, not a lot of updates. This week is a bit slow in terms of work, which I am trying to take advantage of to get ahead in writing. I mentioned that it's National Poetry Month and that I have quite a few events to go to, but I'm also doing a challenge. We try to write 30 poems, so a poem a day for the month of April, and I've been pretty good about it. I've written so far 14 poems, or I'm writing my 14th poem. And I'm not gonna lie, I've written some bangers. I've also written some not bangers. Some of them kind of suck. That just comes with the territory of writing a lot. The most important thing is to allow yourself to get lost in the craft. Now I have some work to get finished, and I'm probably gonna read. Hello, it is Wednesday. It's the middle of the workday. I am working on some editing for a client project, and then I have some writing to do later. Today, I'm starting a graphic novel. I have been wanting to get back into graphic novels lately. I think since I'm in such a weird mood where I want to read, but maybe I just don't have enough focus juice. I'm gonna try to refocus some of my reading to graphic novels. I have a couple of manga that I picked up last year that I never got into, so I do want to pick those up as well. But from the library, I borrowed Mouse by Art Spiegelman. I've started the first one several times throughout my life, and I've always been interested, but I just never brought myself to get a copy. Is the complete edition. It seems unlikely because it seems like I am the last person to read it. But if you haven't heard about Mouse, or if you're not sure what it's about, it's a sort of biography of the artist and writer's father. Survived the Holocaust, and the artwork is depicted in like mice and cats. I believe this is one of the books that's been banned a couple of times across the US. not entirely sure why. Like, even within the reasoning of a lot of conservatives' book banning agenda, for whatever reason, even if you agree with it, and I definitely do not, but even if you did agree with the agenda that they typically have, I don't see why this would be included in said agenda. I'm pretty sure the US has a pretty unified stance against Nazism and the Holocaust and the truth of what occurred. Who knows with people who like to ban books? It's really confounding, so I'm not even going to try to understand. I think I'm gonna use it as like a break between reading my novel. Here's the Nike version. It's a book of the month. I'm really liking it so far. I haven't read a book about like young folks in a while, as weird as that may sound, but it's nice to get back into the mindset of like teen/early 20s. It's a very stark difference. Not just, I don't think it has to do anything with maturity. It could be said that maybe when you're an older writer or a wiser writer in the perspective of someone who is older, you do have a bit of perspective in the life lived. But I think like when you're a younger writer, or when you're writing from the perspective of a younger person, you kind of have leeway to write with less ego, or maybe ego is not the right word, but you have more freedom to not really know. Obviously, the last books I've read were about middle-aged women who did not know or who weren't certain about where they were in their lives, but the uncertainty that is written with people that are older than 2030 is so much different than the uncertainty written in people in their 20s. Just a different and more honest type of uncertainty, I think. Fresher type of unknowing, or more willingness to learn rather than dwell in the unknowing. I'm gonna get back to work. I may read a little bit later. I don't feel all too well today. I think in spring, I spit a little bit. I think this is just like my normal state of being during spring, which sucks because I get so excited about better weather and warmth, but I also feel like hell. I'll see you later. Bye. Hello, it is Thursday. I have read quite a bit of Tomorrow. I'm more than halfway done now. I like the way that things are progressing. Really interesting premise. I love how they talk about video games and the artistry and the passion that comes in creating and playing them. I really enjoy watching Sadie and Sam develop as teens to young adults. A lot of like their miscommunications and just the tension that comes is so relatable. I think I might finish this soon. It'll be the fastest I've finished a book in a while. But it's just like, it's one of those stories where you don't really have to stop and think about any complicated language or turn of phrase. It's very straightforward. But I also love the storytelling in it. Say straightforward, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not complex or that it's not rich. It is very rich, and I particularly love the way that it's told like lore. And from the very beginning, the way that it's narrated tells you that there's something to come in the future and that it's setting the stage for that. That's such a fun way of telling the story. It's kind of like, it's both mythological and lore-esque, but it's also like an access Hollywood story. Mouse is in the other room, but I read a bit of that last night as well. I'm just finishing up one last thing for work, and then I'm going to read and probably take a nap. Did stay up a bit last night to read my books, which is not a bad feeling. It's just that I'm a little tired. I have a poetry event this weekend, which I'm really excited for. My friend Monica is the poet laureate of a nearby city, and she's done this amazing project where some local poets, myself included, have added our poetry to this inventory, and she's placed QR codes throughout the city so that people can scan and then discover poetry. And we're doing a reading to celebrate on Sunday, and I'm really excited. I know I didn't introduce the books at the beginning of the vlog, and I know that's typically what people do, but I am such a mood reader that I don't like planning my books. I may just stop it at tomorrow. I call it T cubed. That's not what anyone says, and it's super nerdy, but it's just a lot faster. I'm gonna finish T cubed, and I may just end the vlog once I finish Mouse, so we'll see. Hi, hello. You are resting on plushies right now, and I am exfoliated, moisturized, and braided because it's almost time for bed. I finished tomorrow, T cubed today, and I loved it. It was really sad. These are my fresh thoughts, so not super articulated yet. I did mention earlier that I loved how the narrative style felt like it was telling lore, so in the way of modern mythology of celebrities. Love the way that Zevin talks about art and artists and how creators pour themselves into art, but also how consumers of art also pour themselves into art. Video games specifically are a unique form of art, specifically interactive. And in order for you to consume this art, you have to make a mark into it. I think the way that Sadie and Sam talk about playing games as a way not just of escaping their world, but also a way of living out other selves was just so profound. I've never been like super into games. I used to play video games when I was a teenager. Did feel that sense of kinship over gamers. It was really nostalgic. I looked up old 2-bit games that I really loved in high school, and I think now that I've read this, I'm looking at it with the perspective of the creator and all that goes into designing. And it is like painting, or it is like constructing poetry. Looked up one of these old games that I used to play. It's called I Fell in Love with the Majesty of Colors, and it just reminded me of something that Sadie would have created. Link it below. It's on Newgrounds still. When I got my Nintendo Switch and I started playing Animal Crossing a couple years ago, I did have a newfound love for video games, but this just recolored it for me, and I'm so excited to play more games on my Switch now. How they mentioned like Harvest Moon and Animal Crossing, and obviously Dov doesn't like those laid back farming games. Oh my god, I know so many people like him from video game communities. But yeah, I really liked it. I'm gonna play more video games tomorrow probably, but right now I am going to read Mouse. I think I'm just going to end the vlog once I finish Mouse. I like to take my time with graphic novels. I think I consume them the way that I consume movies, where it's like I want to see visually the story going on, as well as the dialogue and the action. We'll see how this goes, but I wanted to check in. This is my Yosemite poster. That is a stuffed bunny on top of my bookshelf. Good night. Saturday, aka Pancake Day, but Before I start cooking, I wanted to show you what I got garage sailing this morning. So I went to a house near my neighborhood and they had some toys. I got Spanish flashcards because my partner is learning Spanish on Duolingo, and I thought this would be a cute way to practice, like casually learning Spanish here and there. My main Duolingo languages are German, which I'm brushing up, and Italian, but you know, I also take Spanish every now and then. The idea for this was to bring it along in road trips. We go on a lot of road trips and drives throughout the year, so this would be fun. But yes, and it's really cute. I love the artwork. Look at the little gato. I also got a Rubik's Cube because I've never solved one before and I've never Googled how to. So my plan is to learn how to do this. Childhood dream. I'm going to work towards it. And then after the garage sale, I went to our local historical society museum, and they have rummage sales throughout the year, and it's really cute. They have a lot of neat stuff. So first I got this handmade mug, and it was only $1, but it's really pretty. I love the speckles. I don't really have any mugs like this except souvenir mugs, which I don't want to drink out of because I tend to drop mugs. So this one I won't be so sad about if I chip it. I got a book. This is Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel García Márquez. I read 100 Years of Solitude a couple of years ago, and I really liked it, but I don't think I ever read anything else by him. Everyone was reading this during the height of the pandesal, and I never got around to it. And I do love Everyman's Library editions. It's nice to add this to my collection. And I also got this mini telescope, and I'm really excited about this. So we had really good binoculars. For traveling, we like to go and see wildlife. So whenever we're in like Yosemite or Montana, Wyoming, when we've been up to Alaska, we like to look for bears. And I think I lost our binoculars, so I've been on the hunt for some ever since. But this would be a cool alternative because it's a lot lighter. We're gonna go to Hawaii next month, and it should be whale season. I'm hoping they're still there. We've actually had some whales around here, so I'm gonna bring this just in case there's anything to see. Every time I'm at a beach on the Pacific Ocean, I look for whales, and I've had pretty good luck. I saw whales the last time we were in Hawaii, and then I see them sometimes when we're walking up and down the coasts up here. But yes, that's my estate sale haul. I'm gonna make breakfast. Bye. Hello friends, new angle. I just wanted to close out the vlog because I finished Mouse last night. Stayed up because I really couldn't put it down once I got into book 2. It was just an incredibly well written and drawn graphic novel. I don't read a lot of graphic novels. I'm hoping to get back into them, and Mouse definitely kick-started interest in this type of storytelling. It's just so masterfully done. Probably one of the last people on BookTube to read it, but it's such a gripping and horrifying story, but it's told through anamorphic creatures. And he talks about it in the book because it's told in sort of a frame story. So the outer frame is the artist talking to his dad, and it centers his sort of strained relationship. His mother unfortunately committed suicide when he was young, and this is about him in around middle age talking to his dad as his dad is getting older, and he highlights a lot of conflict between his own personality and his dad's, and then within that framework, his dad is telling the story of surviving the Holocaust. He talks within the book about struggling to convey the absolute and sheer horror of what his dad went through in a comic book. I didn't want to trivialize what his father went through before, especially we tended to view comics as like a lighthearted, childish medium. I think this was probably one of the first books that got mainstream media attention that was talking about such a graphic, no pun intended, horrifying and real tale. I can only imagine what it must have been like to read this for the first time when it just first came out. So doesn't shy away from the absolute terror and violence that his father went through. I think that he tried to be careful in portraying that, because on one hand, you don't want to be gratuitous. You don't want to portray that violence for the sake of just being vulgar or horrifying your audience. You want it to mean something. He didn't shy away from the body horror and the anxiety and the sheer terror that came with surviving a time like this. Some things that I wondered about were his choice to portray Polish people as pigs. It seemed like there was a conscious choice behind each animal. Like, obviously, the Nazis and the Germans were portrayed as cats, the Jews as mice. Later on, the Americans are dogs. He meets a French person and he's portrayed as a frog. I guess you have to make choices. He even talks about how the metaphor kind of falls apart when you talk about pets. And he even shows discussing what he should portray his girlfriend, because she's French, but she converted to Judaism. So is she a frog or is she a mouse? But knowing what pigs symbolize in Judaism and what he chose to portray pigs as is just, it's a little uncomfortable. That aside, I think this was a really wonderful, is that a good word? I think this was a really important read. Again, I really don't know why a school district, especially like a middle school or a high school, would choose to ban this. It's very violent and it does have nudity, but not in a sense that I think someone who's like 13 to 18 years old wouldn't understand what it's there for. It's all for the sake of telling the story, and the story is for the sake of showing a side of history. Really, I don't understand. In the second book, he talks about his success after his father died, his inner conflict in portraying his dad truthfully and in all the flaws that his dad had and in all the difficulties that he had with his dad, but also being honest. He talks about the media reception to the book and how they criticized or they questioned his use of anamorphic creatures, whether or not this was an appropriate story to tell, if German children had enough stories of the Holocaust, which I think is a super American question. I studied abroad in Germany in high school as an exchange student, 10th and 11th grade, and we studied the Holocaust very in depth, and we visited a concentration camp. And it's just that the education system, obviously it wasn't perfect, but they were very honest and straightforward about what happened. And my teacher talked about how she started learning about the Holocaust in first grade. Obviously, they weren't teaching it just to make first graders feel bad or guilty about an event that occurred before they were born, but they taught it because it was important for a citizen of that country to understand what their country did and what happened in their country. So I think that idea of whitewashing history or softening the blow of history is just so strange, and also such a uniquely American thing. I don't know if other countries have that sense of glazing over mistakes or inhumane decisions they made. I don't know what it's like in other countries, but from my experience in the American and German education system, it was very different. And it seems like the US has a lot to reconcile with how they teach their children and what they choose to teach their children. I think this is a really important book. I'm glad I read this. I also learned that Art Spiegelman invented Garbage Pail Kids, and I think he was also one of our co-creators of Wacky Packages. I used to collect those. See his humor, because there are really funny moments in this. As horrifying as most of the story is, he also does have a really clever and really sharp sense of humor. And I see that. I can make the connection between this and Garbage Pail Kids. It was a fun fact that I learned when I was Googling him. I'm gonna end the vlog here. It is Saturday, so we're gonna go for a little hike in the city. Tomorrow, I will go to a poetry event and I'm gonna recite, so I may end the vlog with that. But thank you for following me in another reading vlog. I read mostly these two and Motherhood, and they weren't exactly in conversation, but I think that's fine. I don't think each reading vlog needs to be themed. They were just good books and books that I was able to lose myself in for a little bit, so yes, that's what connects them. But thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! HANDSPUN ROSARIES is about my journey growing up and then eventually out of the Catholic Church. Of Easter, which just happened, I'd like to share a poem for you called If I Were Real. I am the bread of life, wholly carved somewhere between pillowy and stale, melting on tongue as I die once again to relieve you of the lies, of the gossip, and the extra plates of dinner. Demerit against goodness, scrubbed every Sunday. I died on a March Friday at 3 p.m. and you, exclusive club of the saved, who relinquish Coke and burgers until the promised day of my return, touched my marble body, reliving every year the gruesome death of deaths. Of course I will remember you, my millions of children, lighting marble floor to kiss marble feet, fasting on holy days and baking hot cross buns on feasts, fickle beings who love goodness and wish themselves eternal. If I were real, I'd be exhausted, living forever and watching the plastered blood of my thorny crown mass-produced to sit in living rooms and rec centers. Would it be all that bad to embrace the nothing after this? If I believed in you as you stubbornly, miraculously believe in me, I wish only that you breathe spring air without question, that you care for your wounds as gently as you kiss mine, that you hold life more closely than the promise of whatever comes after. Eat my flesh into existence, and I will die every year for you. For good is good, with or without my turning. Thank you.